Hey everyone, welcome back to Your Local Haunt, the podcast where we peel back the layers of history to reveal the ghosts that lie beneath. I'm Scott, your host, and tonight we're heading to one of the most iconic paranormal locations in the entire UK. It's a place dripping with superstition, rammed thick with folklore, and scarred by one of the darkest chapters in English legal history, Pendle Hill. So if you've ever travelled through Lancashire, you'll know the site. A dramatic looming rise in the landscape, lone, imposing, and somehow sentient, as if it's watching you. Tonight we climb the hill's haunted slopes, dive into its ancient history, revisit the infamous Pendle witch trials of 1612, and uncover the chilling stories that locals still whisper today. So settle in, dim the lights, and let's walk together into the shadow of Pendle Hill. Before we dive into the witches, we need to understand the hill itself. Because Pendle Hill isn't just a backdrop, it's a character. Pendle stands at 557 metres, not towering by mountain standards, but the shape of the hill is what captures people's imagination. Sharp, isolated, and triangular. From miles away it looks like something drawn from mythology. A monument almost, rather than a natural formation. And here's the thing, Pendle has been spiritually significant for thousands of years. Long before Christianity, the ancient Britons saw hills as sacred places, gateways to the realm of spirits, places where the veil between worlds thinned. Archaeological finds at the region show Bronze Age burial activity, ancient ritual sites, carved stones and earthworks, areas associated with pagan ceremony. To ancient people, hills were not just land, they were temples. And you can still feel that atmosphere today. Visitors report a strange change in energy as they approach the summit, a kind of humming tension, as if the air itself is charged. Locals will tell you the hill has moods. Good days, it's protective. Bad days, it's wrathful. And many believe that the events of 1612, the trials, the accusations, the deaths, weren't just human tragedies. They were moments that awakened something ancient sleeping beneath the soil. Something the hill still remembers. Let's step into the world beneath the hill as it was in the early 1600s. We often romanticise the past, but Lancashire in 1612 was anything but romantic. It was poor, harsh, and deeply superstitious. To survive, families relied on each other and on old traditions. Folk magic wasn't unusual. In fact, it was essential. If your cow fell ill, you'd go to a healer. If your child had a fever, you'd seek a charm. And if you believed someone had cursed you, you'd want a counterspell. People called these practitioners wise women, cunning men, charmers and healers. But the line between wise woman and witch depended on who you ask, and who you angered. Then there was the religious tension. Lancashire was considered a hotbed of Catholic loyalty, even decades after the country had become officially Protestant. Suspicious eyes were everywhere. Government officials didn't trust the region. Witchcraft accusations then were a convenient way for authorities to assert control, and for villages to resolve old grudges. Into this charged environment stepped two families whose names would become infamous. The heart of the Pendle story lies with two families, rivals, alike in their poverty, and both rumoured to have dealings in witchcraft. The Demdikes, led by Elizabeth Southerns, known as Old Demdike. She was around 80 years old, a staggering age for that time. Descriptions of Old Demdike are chilling. Blind, frail, her face deeply lined with wild white hair and a sharp tongue. To the villagers, she was both respected and feared. For decades, she'd been known as a cunning woman, someone who sold charms, healing remedies, and protection against curses. Her home, Malkin Tower, was little more than a rundown stone hut, but it became the centre of a local network of magic, superstition, and survival. And then we've got the Chattox family. Across the valley lived Anne Whittle, known as Old Chattox. She too was a wise woman, or a witch, depending on which one you believed. Her rivalry with the Demdikes ran deep. There were accusations of stolen grain, stolen clothing, accusation of curses cast on cattle, old grudges, and ancient gossip. In a community as small as Pendle's, bad blood between the two matriarchs could infect the entire region. Villagers feared both families, but they also relied on them. And it was a mix of fear and dependence that set the stage for the devastation. The fire that lit the fuse began on a cold March day in 1612. Alison Device, granddaughter of old Demdike, encountered a travelling peddler named John Law. She asked him for pins. Pins were valuable, used in charms, ritual protection, sewing, and wound care. Law refused. Accounts vary, but some say she begged. Others say she demanded. Either way, he walked along. Moments later, he collapsed. Modern historians believe he suffered a stroke. Perfectly possible, and a tragic coincidence. But John Law, frightened, superstitious, and convinced he had been bewitched, pointed his trembling finger at Alison. This was a time when your word could condemn someone, and his word carried weight. When Alison was interrogated, she was scared, panicked, and in a moment that still echoes through history, she confessed. Not only that, she accused others, including members of the rival Chattox family. People often forget this. The trials began with a frightened young woman trying to save herself by telling the authorities what they wanted to hear. But her confession opened a door that could not be closed. Once one person had confessed, the authorities smelled blood. The magistrates, particularly Roger Nowell, saw Pendle as an opportunity to make a name for themselves. They questioned Alison Device, her mother Elizabeth Device, her brother James, old Demdike, members of the Chattox family, neighbours, anyone who had ever whispered a complaint. And slowly, a web of fear began to reform. Old Demdike and old Chattox were the easiest targets, elderly women with reputations for magic. Their confessions, likely extracted through pressure and intimidation, were damning. Stories emerged of pacts with the devil, clay figures used for curses, animal familiars, threats uttered in anger, and curses that coincided with illness or death. Most of these tales had existed as gossip for years, but now, under the furnace of interrogation, those stories were transformed into evidence. Before long, the list of accused witches grew longer, and the net grew wider, but nothing compared to what happened next. On Good Friday in 1612, the remaining members of the Demdike family gathered at Malkin Tower. Why? Historians disagree. Some believe that they met to discuss how to support the imprisoned family members. Others think it was a simple communal meal, a rare treat in times of scarcity. But neighbours described seeing unusual numbers of people arriving, voices raised, strange shadows moving behind candlelight. To a frightened community, this looked like a conspiracy, a gathering of witches, and Roger Nowell pounced. Everyone associated with the meeting was arrested. Friends, neighbours, family members. This included Elizabeth Device, her children James and Janet, Alice Nutter, a local gentlewoman, several others simply unlucky enough to be present. Janet Device was just 8 or 9 years old, coerced into testifying against her own mother and siblings. Standing on a table so the court could see her, and her testimony sealed their fate. Malkin Tower, once a crumbling refuge for the desperate, became a symbol of doom. Even today, ghost hunters claim the ground around the supposed site radiates dread. The trials of 1612 were held in Lancaster Castle, a place that still stands, still brooding. Imagine the courtroom. Stone walls, cold floor, no defence, and just judges hungry for a spectacle. The accused stood no chance. The charges included murder by witchcraft, cursing neighbours, making clay effigies, pacts with the devil, attending Sabbaths, bewitching livestock, causing illness, and in some cases, simply looking at someone the wrong way. The trials lasted 2 days. 2 days to decide the fate of 12 people. Most were found guilty, and by the end, 10 people from Pendle Hill were condemned to hang. Old Demdike died in prison. Her body was unable to survive the conditions. The others were marched to the gallows. High on Gallows Hill they were executed. Their bodies were left to hang in the wind. Their families were destroyed. Their villages were changed forever. But death wasn't the end of their story. Pendle Hill isn't just haunted because of what happened. It's haunted because the land absorbed the trauma. Now let's explore the reported paranormal activity in detail. Malkin Tower, the witch in rags. Even though the exact location of Malkin Tower is debated, paranormal teams who explore the most likely sites consistently report sudden temperature drops, disembodied whispers, a woman crying or muttering incoherently, footsteps circling them, and someone tugging at their hair or clothing. The most common apparition is an elderly woman in tattered clothing, clutching something close to her chest, perhaps a charm, or a child. Many believe this is old Demdike, still wandering, still searching for her family. Some investigators claim that EVPs capture phrases in the early 17th century dialect, which is unintelligible to modern ears. One team reportedly hearing the word fillet, a term for a familiar spirit. The Black Mass. Pendle Hill's summit is notorious for the dark mass phenomenon. Witnesses describe a shape, blacker than the night, moving against the wind, shifting, almost liquid, sometimes tall, sometimes squat. Those who encounter it describe overwhelming dread and a sense that the mass is intelligent. Not an animal, not a shadow, something else. Some believe it's a manifestation of the collective trauma of the trials. Others say it's older, something that lived on the hill long before humans whispered about witches. The Girl in the Fog. One of the most chilling accounts involves a young girl seen on the lower slopes. She appears in old clothing, bare feet, dirty apron, tangled hair. She doesn't speak. She doesn't blink. Walkers who approach her say she disappears suddenly, or vanishes behind a tree that moments later is simply not there. Some believe that she's Janet Device, the child witness. Others think she was a victim no one ever recorded, the child just lost to the hill itself. Cold hands on the path. A frequent reported experience. A cold, bony hand grabbing a hiker's wrist as they walk past certain spots. It's so sudden, so forceful that people often drop whatever they're carrying. One hiker said she felt fingernails digging into her skin, but there was no marks, only the echo of the grip. Some believe this is Elizabeth Device, a mother trying to find her children, torn from her in life and death. Lancaster Castle, the echoes of the condemned. Inside the old cells at Lancaster Castle, the night staff and visitors report low sobbing, a woman screaming for mercy, footsteps pacing the corridors, shadows passing behind barred doors, icy breath on the back of people's necks. Some say Janet Device has been seen wandering the halls, still calling out for her mother. Others claim to see figures hanging, reenactments of the executions, forever on loop. And Pendle today is a blend of tourism, history, and lingering fear. Visitors on ghost walks report strange lights on the ridge, phantom dogs, the smell of burning herbs, door knocks when no one's there, sudden silence, birds vanishing from the sky as if the world is holding its breath. Hikers sometimes return with missing time, unexplained bruises, frostbite-like marks in warm weather, vivid dreams of women clawing at gallows ropes. And one group claimed they saw a line of 10 figures walking slowly up the hill, only to fade into mist. Pendle Hill is more than a place. It's a story carved into the land. A story of fear, of misunderstanding, of injustice, of women and families destroyed by superstition and desperation. But it's also a story that refuses to die. Maybe the ghosts remain because the world has not learned its lesson. Maybe they stay because the hill remembers. Or maybe the veil there has always just been thin. If you ever visit Pendle Hill, go with respect. Walk softly. Listen closely. And you might just hear the whispers of 1612 carried on in the wind. Thank you for journeying with me through shadows and sorrow tonight. I'm Scott, this is your local haunt, and Pendle Hill is one haunt that will never fade out.